For centuries, we believed we had mapped the greatest secrets of ancient Egypt. We thought the sands had given up their ghosts. We were wrong. Deep beneath the bedrock near Alexandria, archaeologists searching for the lost tomb of Cleopatra stumbled into a void, a darkness that stretched further than their lights could reach. It wasn't a cave. It wasn't a natural fissure. It was a machine, a geometric miracle carved 43 feet underground, running for nearly a mile through solid sandstone with a precision that should not exist without modern laser guidance. But this tunnel was just the beginning. From the submerged ruins of a royal palace off the coast to a flooded tomb that has been sealed since the days of the 18th dynasty, a wave of new discoveries is currently rewriting the timeline of the ancient world. These aren't just statues and dust. They are evidence of advanced engineering, public life, and royal intrigue that have been hidden for millennia. Today, we are going underground and underwater to piece together a puzzle that has been scattered for 4,000 years. The search began with a theory that the final resting place of Queen Cleopatra was hidden beneath the temple ruins of Taposiris Magna. But what the team found was arguably more valuable than gold. As they peeled back layers of debris, they hit a ceiling of bedrock that had been artificially cut. They had found a tunnel. But tunnel is too simple a word for what this is. This structure runs for over 4,200 feet. That is nearly a mile of digging through unstable, heavy sandstone. When modern engineers dig tunnels, they use GPS, laser levels, and massive boring machines to ensure the two ends meet and the floor stays level. The builders of this tunnel had copper chisels and oil lamps, yet the tunnel maintains a terrifyingly perfect gradient. Experts are calling it an engineering miracle because mathematically, the margin for error here was zero. If the workers had deviated by even a fraction of a degree at the start, they would have ended up hundreds of feet off course by the end. Instead, they created a perfect conduit. The architecture mirrors the famous Tunnel of Eupalinos in Greece, a structure once regarded as one of the wonders of the ancient world. This similarity suggests something profound, a transfer of knowledge. It implies that the engineers of Alexandria and the architects of Greece were sharing blueprints for the impossible. But what was it for? The tunnel wasn't a tomb. The current theory is that it acted as a massive aqueduct, channeling fresh water to the temple complex above. It transformed a dry desert outpost into a thriving religious sanctuary, and we know who was worshiping there. Inside the sediment, clogging the tunnel and the surrounding area, archaeologists recovered coins bearing the face of Cleopatra II, along with alabaster statues of the goddess Isis. They found cemeteries packed with mummies facing the temple, people who wanted to spend eternity close to this sacred water source. This wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was the artery of a bustling spiritual metropolis that collapsed into silence centuries ago. While one team was digging through the sandstone, another was diving into the Mediterranean. Off the coast of Alexandria, the ancient city didn't just disappear, it sank. Earthquakes and tidal waves dragged the royal quarters into the sea over 1,000 years ago. For decades, divers have brought up coins and columns, but recently they found something that brings the ancient texts to life in a way stone never could. Buried in the silt was the hull of a massive 2,000-year-old ship. This was not a fishing vessel. It wasn't a cargo barge hauling grain to Rome. This was a pleasure boat. Ancient historians like Strabo had written about these ships, luxurious floating villas that drifted down the Nile, carrying royalty and aristocrats in a display of impossible wealth. For a long time, historians treated those descriptions as exaggerations. The discovery of this wreck proves they were telling the truth. The vessel is over 100 feet long. As forensic archaeologists analyzed the wood, they found something startlingly human: graffiti. Etched into the planks were messages in Greek. This seemingly small detail changes the entire narrative of the ship. It tells us that this wasn't just a ceremonial object used once a year. It was a lived-in space. It paints a picture of the Nile not just as a river, but as a superhighway of the ancient world. Imagine this boat in its prime, drifting past the pyramids, the deck shaded by silk canopies, the air filled with music, while the crew, whose graffiti remains, worked below. It highlights a complex economy of leisure, trade, and travel that functioned with the regularity of modern ocean liners. But as the Roman era faded, so did the boat. It likely sank during the cataclysmic earthquakes that liquidated the ground beneath. Alexandria, taking the palace and its treasures down with it. freezing that moment of luxury in time until divers brushed away the sand 2 millennia later. Let's move south, away from the coast to the area near Cairo. Here, the discoveries pivot from royal luxury to the intricate machinery of daily life. Archaeologists have excavated a massive valley temple that dates back 4,500 years, far older than the tunnel or the boat we just discussed. This site is unique because of how it connects the earth to the sky. The valley temple was linked by a long stone causeway to a sun god temple higher up on the plateau. The layout is a masterclass in stagecraft. The Egyptians designed their architecture to be experienced in motion. You wouldn't just walk into a temple. You would arrive by boat at the Valley Temple's harbor. You would step off onto a grand quay, pass through dark columned halls, and then ascend the causeway into the blinding light of the desert sun to meet the god. But the most significant find here isn't a statue, it's a list. Carved into the walls is one of the earliest public calendars ever discovered. It doesn't list harvest times or tax records. It lists festivals. It is a schedule of religious events for the community. This proves that 4,500 years ago, society was strictly organized around a shared temporal reality. The priests weren't just spiritual leaders, they were timekeepers. What makes this site even more fascinating is what happened after the gods left. In the layers of dirt above the temple floor, the team found board game pieces, specifically pieces for a game like Senet. This implies that centuries after the temple was built, when its strict religious function might have softened, locals repurposed the cool, shaded ruins as a place to gather, talk, and play games. It humanizes them. It reminds us that between the grand rituals and the building of pyramids, people were just trying to pass the time, sitting on the steps of a fading empire, playing a game in the shadow of their ancestors. Finally, we turn to the most prestigious address in the afterlife, the Valley of the Kings. For 100 years, since the discovery of Tutankhamun, the valley was thought to be tapped out. Archaeologists believed every inch had been scoured. They were wrong. Researchers recently announced the discovery of a tomb belonging to Pharaoh Thutmose II. This is the first royal tomb discovered in the area since 1922. But when they opened the seal, they didn't find gold stacked to the ceiling. They found chaos. The tomb had been flooded in antiquity. Badly positioned, perhaps rushed, it had taken on water shortly after the burial. The ancient priests, in a panic, had entered the tomb, removed the mummy and the most valuable goods to save them, and sealed the damage. However, they left something behind. A single alabaster jar. The inscription links the burial directly to Queen Hatshepsut, the wife and half-sister of the king, who would go on to become one of Egypt's most powerful female pharaohs. This jar confirms the timeline of a royal power struggle and a desperate attempt to secure a legacy before the water destroyed it. But the real story may be what is sitting right next to it. Near the flooded tomb stands a massive mound of rubble. For years, it was assumed to be just debris from previous excavations. But recent scans suggest the rubble is artificial, a deliberate camouflage. The working theory is terrifying simple. The rubble was placed there to hide a second tomb. If the first tomb was emptied to save the king, where did they put him? The answer might be under that mound. We could be standing on top of an intact royal burial that was hidden so effectively that it fooled everyone, from ancient grave robbers to modern Victorian explorers, from a geometric miracle carved in the dark to a sunken yacht in the Mediterranean, from a calendar that organized an empire to a flooded tomb that might be pointing the way to the next great discovery. These finds prove that ancient Egypt is not a closed book. It is a landscape that is still shifting, still breathing, and still hiding things from us. The technology they used, the lives they lived, and the secrets they buried are far more complex than we ever gave them credit for. The sand is deep, and we have barely scratched the surface. If you want to keep exploring the lost chapters of history with us, make sure you are subscribed. There are more excavations underway right now, and you won't want to miss what they find next.